everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. Today is going to be your Akashic Records 101 Everything You Need to Know video. We're going to be talking about what are the Akashic Records, how can you access them, can anyone access them? I'm going to be talking about some of the things that come up in Akashic Records readings, and we're just really going to get into like a good overview of what the Akashic Records are, how they work, all the fun things. Okay, so let's get into it. What are the Akashic Records? So I've heard it explained two main ways. So Akashic Records, think of an infinite library where there is this library that's available almost in like an angelic dimension. And in this library is going to be all the books about your soul, your soul's purpose, your relationships, parenting, careers, past lives, all the things. And everybody has these Akashic records of their life and their soul's purpose and all of these cool things. And so within the Akashic Records, you can learn about your soul's purpose when it comes to career, your connection with people and relationships. You can get parenting advice, career advice. It really allows you to just tap into your higher selves. There are what they call the Lords of the Records. And so the Lords of the Records are actually going to be the people. Well, they're not people. They're kind of more like an angelic being. And they're actually the ones making sure that we get the right information at the right time. Because obviously, if you've never been in your Akashic Records and then you go in, and another way I've heard it explained is basically like the Google of your life. Like if you could Google anything about your life, your past life, relationships, all these different areas, that's another way to think of it. Some people think of it as like the cosmic internet, and it's the Akashic Records are almost like a cosmic Google search that you can do through past lives, soul purpose, different things like that. You can also untap talking about past lives. Like maybe you find out that in your past life, you really struggled with being able to voice your opinion. And so now in this life, you're really struggling with going against the grain or going against the norm or speaking your truth if it's different from somebody else's truth. And you can actually uncover that some of these challenges you have now are things that maybe you've been working through for, various lifetimes. A big principle of the Akashic Record is the understanding that the soul is eternal and that we have, lots of different lives within this soul where we're able to experience life in many different ways. So that's essentially kind of a snapshot of the Akashic Records. So it's not necessarily just for you to go in and be like, am I in the right job? Yes, no. The Akashic Records are not necessarily a place where you would get yes or no answers. They're more of a place where you can ask questions and almost be prompted with, more information or realizations or knowings or visuals. And I think it looks a little bit different every time I personally go into the Akashic Records. So sometimes I go in and it's almost like I'm having like a dialogue with a librarian. Like almost like I'm going into my Akashic Records and there's these giant books that I'm looking at. Sometimes these books are so big that instead of having like a binding on the side, they have like giant piano keys that are keeping the books together because they're so big. And sometimes I feel like I'm like sitting down in a library, like conversing with a librarian about whatever it is I came there to unpack. Sometimes I feel like it's more of almost like a visual or like a video into past lives or somebody else's lives or a different person's perspective or point of view. And every experience is so different, which is what makes it so cool. And I also think a lot of it is aligned with what gifts you have in the spiritual realm as well. My gifts primarily are being able to see visuals and being able to hear and communicate. And so that's how a lot of mine in the Akashic Records show up, because that's how a lot of my medium readings go, is these abilities to kind of see and communicate through thought, through word, different things like that. So I personally try to go into my Akashic Records every day. Every day I have something that I feel like I'm like, ooh, what about this? And what I would normally do is I would be like, ooh, what about this? And then I would try to figure out and solve it for myself. And instead now I'm like, oh, wait, let me go ask that question to the records and figure out like whatever it is I'm probably trying to figure out. There's probably layers to that I need to unpack. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go on a walk and to get into the Akashic Records, generally I'll do a grounding meditation just to like get myself centered. Then I'll say an opening prayer to actually access the Akashic Records. And in this opening prayer, I might say that I want to access a piece of my record. So I would want to access the record of Madison Worth Daniels, because in the Akashic Records, you're supposed to use full names in order to tap into that. So if I wanted to access, what am I supposed to do in my business, I might come in and say, I want to look at the record of Madison Worth Daniels' business within spiritual healing, and I want to find this answer in my journey with spiritual healing. So there's different ways you can kind of tap in depending on what you're looking for, whether it be business, whether it be personal. You can also read, I'm not super well versed in this, but I'm experimenting with it a little bit more, is you can actually read like houses or historical places. I was actually listening to a podcast. It was a podcast done by an Akashic Records reader, and they were in the Akashic Records, and the person that was doing the interview wanted to know about these pyramids. And so basically they tapped into these pyramids, Akashic Record, and they were learning about these pyramids through the Akashic Records. So cool. So basically they can be used to tap into so many different things and to give us a lot of guidance and knowledge that we have already intuitively in ourselves, that a lot of times we don't acknowledge that we have, and instead we look for others, validation, or different things like that. Okay, so back to how I access them. A lot of times I'll go on a walk, I'll do a grounding meditation, and then as I'm leaving on my walk, I'll say my opening prayer to open the Akashic Records, and then I'll just kind of ask questions, and it'll be a little different every time. Like I said, sometimes it's almost like I'm having a dialogue. Like I'm like, hey, I really want to know, one that I was actually looking into is, this is a real one that I went through this morning. I opened my Akashic Records, and I wanted to open the record of my spiritual healing business, and I wanted to figure out whether or not I'm supposed to go to like spiritual festivals and fairs and things like that and be like a reader at festivals or fairs, or if that's something that is like not in line with, how my soul intends for me to use this gift. And after I went through, a couple layers and like probably like a 45-minute walk, I was like, oh wow, that's a way I could use my gifts, yeah, but it's not a way that I could use my gifts that's in line with my highest purpose, my highest calling, and how I want my everyday life to look. And so instead, I'm gonna, spend my time and energy trying to build that rather than build this. So that's another way the Akashic Records can be really helpful, is if maybe hey, I want to be in the realm of spiritual healing, but within the realm of spiritual healing, there's all these different pathways you can take. And you're like, okay, which one do I take now that I know what path I'm on? Like, what is the best path for me and for what my soul's here to do and for the highest good of all that are involved? Because that's what a lot of the Akashic Records is looking at, is what's the highest good for everybody that's involved, not necessarily what's better for you. The Akashic Records are never able to be accessed either in a place that comes from like manipulative, or like you can't like tap into the Akashic Records or the Akashic Records of somebody else to figure out how to get what you want. Like that's not the purpose of it. So what you get is always for the highest good of everybody that's involved, and a lot of times there's people involved that you don't even realize that are involved. So in this process of tapping into your Akashic Records, you have, a lot of times somebody that you'll converse with while you're in there. For me, sometimes this looks like a physical being. Sometimes this looks like an angelic being. Sometimes it looks like a loved one, like a past loved one that I feel like is guiding me in that Akashic session. Like I said, it's different every time, which is what makes it so cool. So I've been doing Akashic Records reading for myself for a little while, and I just recently started doing them on other people as well. And so I'm so excited to be able to start offering, publicly Akashic Records readings, where if you're wanting to have somebody read your Akashic Records, I offer a reading. It can be done in person or via Zoom. I am in North Carolina, so if you are local or you're going to be local, we can meet in person and do it. I love to connect in nature, find a state park or somewhere like that to go to and just open the records, chit chat, go deep. And then if you are not available to be in North Carolina, I also offer a Zoom option. I know a lot of people for things like this prefer the Zoom option because it feels a little less scary just hopping on a Zoom call to have somebody read your soul's purpose rather than, meeting them in person. Before readings, what you should do is you should really tap into what is my intention? What do I want to uncover during this reading? Maybe it's that I want to know if this relationship that I'm in right now is ultimately going to allow me to step into my higher self or my higher purpose. Maybe I'm struggling with this career and I want to know which one of these career paths is going to allow me to be the best version of myself. Maybe I'm struggling with parenting. Maybe I'm struggling with a certain person in my life. Maybe I'm just feeling really lost and confused. When I started tapping into the Akashic Records, it was honestly just because I was really lost and confused. I was working in the corporate world, and I was at the point where I knew, like, I'm not supposed to be in the corporate world anymore, but I don't have a clue what I'm supposed to do, but, like, it's not this. And so I really started to tap in to the Akashic Records originally through, like, the plane of tapping into soul's purpose, and, like, what does that look like, and how can I bring that to life, and all those sorts of things. But like I said, lots of different uses for it. Before you do a reading, you can just set whatever that intention is. You can come with questions. I always ask no, yes, no questions, because that's not really how the records work. And also, this is not a tool for psychic prediction. So in the records, there are future possibilities, but ultimately the Akashic Records is based on the premise that everybody has free will and that the choices people are making are changing all the time. And so it's not necessarily anything where you're supposed to come with a yes no question or with anything that's like future predicting. It's more, what do you want to uncover about yourself, whether it be to heal, to free yourself from anxiety. It's personally freed me from a ton of anxiety, worry, fear, resentment, anger. I've been able to tap into past lives that I've had and figure out why, certain things bother me in this life. Just so much insight. So if that's what you're looking for, I really think an Akashic Records reading is probably for you. I've linked my website as well in the caption or in the show notes or in my bio, so you guys will be able to connect with me. I also have a blog and a video talking about my journey from corporate girly to spiritual healer if you guys want to learn more. Thanks so much for tuning in, and as always, happy healing.